Your Excellency, the First Lady of Edo State, Mrs. Betsy Obaseki, Your Excellency, my brother, the Deputy Governor of Edo State, and his lovely wife, Miriam Schreiber, the Speaker, Edo State House of Assembly, the Right Honorable Marcus Onobun, and his amiable wife, the State Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Honorable Anthony Ezebeme, the State Chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Barrister Jesua, members of the National Assembly who are present, members of the Edo State House of Assembly, senior government functionaries. I acknowledge the Chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Oluwapata, and also the Crown Prince of Benin Kingdom. We have a special guest who will be introduced shortly. He is Sir David Ajay. This morning, I am going to attempt to explain to Abiyayiwa and her father, and also millions of Nigerians and Edos, where we are going to as a people, and what our agenda of making Edo great again is all about. Can I have the presentation? As the chairman of the summit said in his introduction, the coronavirus pandemic has changed our world. Life on Earth will not be the same again. Over 1 million people globally have died as a result of this pandemic. But for us in Nigeria, it's even more devastating. Yes, we have less than 65,000 people who have died today from the pandemic. But that is even worse than the economic effect that this pandemic has cost. The World Bank report states that over 100 million Nigerians, more than 50% of our population, has now been thrown into extreme poverty. And we're beginning to see the signs already. The NSAS demonstrations you saw were not unconnected with this devastating economic impact of coronavirus. This virus has caused serious disruptions to lives and livelihoods. It's caused disruptions to businesses the way we have always known. The response to the consequences of this virus are varied from society to society and from country to country. But what is clear, and as was pointed out in the introduction, is that only those countries, only those states that are organized, that can turn this crisis into opportunities. Because in every adversity, there is usually an opportunity. We are fortunate in Edo State that 4 years ago, when we started with our first Alaro Daro, we set the agenda for reform. You pushed us, you challenged us to reform our state and our state systems. And that has given us a head start. We have not solved all the problems, but at least we have identified the pain points, and we believe that we know what to do. And we are assured that from what happened on September 19th, the people of Edo State are aligned. Majority of the people of Edo State spoke, and it was clear that they endorsed what we had started, and they wanted to see a continuation. What did we do in the last 4 years? We set the agenda. We set the agenda thinking about Edo from 6 perspectives. First, we had realized that we have to build institutions, because the biggest challenge for us in Africa is we focus on individuals. We want to build individuals and not institutions, forgetting that individuals will come and go. It's only institutions that will remain. So we ensured that we started a process of making people think and do things, realizing that one day they will not be here. It's the structures that they build and leave behind that will succeed them. So we focused on the civil service, we focused on the judiciary and the legislature. Let's even begin to clean up the structures that represent these institutions. We also realized that it's all about the economy. If we are not producing and people are not earning, then there will be misery and unhappiness in the land. And fortunately for us as a people, we are so blessed, we're so endowed with much more resources than we deserve. We have some of the best ecosystems in terms of ecology in West Africa. We have one of the best water aquifers. We have the largest onshore reserves of gas. So whether it's resources to produce food, we have. Whether it's resources to produce energy, we have. We have one of the most lush rainforests. So putting all of this together with our people, it will be our fault if we don't build the strongest economy on the subcontinent. We also set the agenda for social development. It's about people, and it's about training people to do what they ought to do. It starts with education. And so we spared no stone unturned in focusing on education. And we are happy and proud to see the largest component of our budget spend is on education. We have reformed or started the reformation process of our education system from the foundation. And today, globally, Edo State education reform has been acknowledged. In my speeches today, I informed the audience that at least as of September this year, Edo was one of 5, it was accelerator countries in terms of education. We were the only subnational on that list. We've also started a fundamental reform of our healthcare system, as if we knew that coronavirus will hit us and we would not be able to travel out for medical care outside. We started rethinking healthcare, understanding that healthcare is not about building hospitals. It's about developing an entire chain. It's about fixing your primary healthcare system so that when people engage with the healthcare system at the very base, you pick them up immediately. You can pick up diseases
early at that point, and then refer them to the rest of the system for treatment. It's about training and retraining your healthcare workers. It's about ensuring that you expose your workers to current research. It's about making sure that you have a system that does not make people afraid to go and seek medical care because they don't have money. They don't have money in their pockets. By putting in a health insurance program in place so that we can pay for our healthcare system. So it's about our people. It's about focusing on the vulnerable people in our society. We understand all of this, and we have to put in a lot more investments in making sure that we get more of our people included and feel a sense of government. We have started the process of rebuilding our infrastructure. So road infrastructure, we are fortunate with the partnerships we've gotten into. We have one of the best developed digital infrastructure network. It's not enough, but it's a good start. 400 kilometers of fiber built around Edo State in 4 years is a good start. And we hope we can progress that development. So in terms of infrastructure, we have started. We understand how to build roads. We understand how to design roads in our climates. We understand how to fund our road projects. We have also set the agenda for our environment. We believe in environmental sustainability. We have undertaken a forest audit to see and understand the amount of deforestation that has occurred in our state. It's quite sad. It's a pity that out of this almost 630,000 hectares of pristine rainforest, which we inherited, today we have less than a quarter of that landmass available as forests. We've done the audit. We now know that we can no longer continue to deforest, and we now have to put in place a plan, a strategy to recreate our forests so that we can maintain our environmental sustainability. We understand now that we must plan our cities. We must have urban plans. We must have regional plans, because the major challenges with flooding and erosion in Edo State is because over the last few decades, we have operated without any physical, not to even talk about economic or social plans. Finally, we've realized the power of our arts and culture. We've worked with institutions like the Smithsonian to bring back some works. We've worked with the federal government to renew our museums. We've hosted the National Festival of Arts. We've engaged with our diaspora. So we understand that these are things that are important and things we must now focus on in making Edo great again. So, given today's realities, given the effect of the pandemic on us and where we are, we have no choice but to go further, to press on harder. So the next 4 years, we're not going to be talking about infrastructure. We have to take it for granted and just continue to build. We realize that what's important is our people. We're not going to go back on the reforms we started in education. If anything, we're going to complete the process of training the teachers that will train our children. What we need to do in the next 4 years, and what we are going to be emphasizing, is to strengthen the public sector and its institutions. Because as politicians, we can promise everything. We can promise that we'll bring moon to bring moon to earth. Yes, that's what we're trained to do as politicians, talking in the pulpit. But who will make these things happen? It's the bureaucracy. It's the public sector. It's the civil service. So our emphasis now will be to recreate our bureaucracy. We're true to ourselves. The bureaucracy in Edo State, and indeed Nigeria, is broken. We now we lay emphasis on the wrong things. So for us in Edo, we are going to leapfrog our public service. We have already built the infrastructure. We're manning our training center where we will train public servants. And in the next 4 years, we're going to roll out a world-class public service. Because we need those institutions to help us drive the reforms. And this will be done by utilizing technology. It's happening everywhere in the world. I want to be the last governor in Edo State that will treat only physical files. We have to improve the human capacity of our state. We've got to keep training people. We've got to make sure that our people are prepared to work. You can't say there's no jobs. No, there's enough work, but we have not succeeded yet in preparing our people to work and take advantage of the opportunities around us. We want to expand our economy, and that's why we've invited most of you here today. We're fortunate that we have power, we have energy, we're building electricity grid and network, and we're building infrastructure. So the ingredients to drive industrialization, the ingredients to drive services are in place. And those will be our focus. Not talking about them, but just doing them. Very dear to our hearts will be our environment. We must now plan our environment. If our forebears planned where we live today the way they did 600-700 years ago, when they did not have the privilege and opportunity of the technology we enjoy today, we have no excuse. We have absolutely no excuse to live in our cities the way we do. We should, as a generation, we should be ashamed of ourselves. And the goal of the next 4 years is to turn that around. So urban renewal and urban planning is critical. And then lastly, what the pandemic has taught us is that at the end of it all, you are responsible for yourself. The pandemic says, you know what? Maintain your lane. Stay in your country. Keep your distance. Do your own thing. So, as a people, we have to first know ourselves, know who we are, know what makes us Edo. When we say Edo is not somewhere else, we have to now tell people what Edo is. We have to now explain to people the greatness of Edo. We have to explain to them why Edos acted the way they did on September 19th. And so that is why this year's theme is important for us. We're not talking about how we'll build roads, how we'll build industries. We're focusing on who we are. Because if you do not know who you are, you cannot express yourself. If you do not know who you are, you don't know where you're coming from. You will not know where you're headed. That's why it's so important for us to focus on who we are, on our greatness, on our heritage, on our past, on our culture, on our arts. It's by discovering who we are can we now step back, understand the world we're in today, and position ourselves for the future. So that's why the next 4 years will begin with us leveraging on one key strategic advantage which we have, which is our arts, our culture, our location, and our land. We have to discover our greatness in our works, because our forefathers have already they expressed who we are in our art forms. And you find these art forms, artifacts, and art pieces all over the world. Shouldn't we ask ourselves, why do others want to keep our works? What have they found in those pieces? We'll now challenge ourselves to understand what our forebears did and how they did what they did. And I have always argued that it's the same blood that flows in their veins that still flows in us today. So the goal for us to reinvigorate our past so that we can create a sustainable future for our children. I've told you why we need to do so, because we cannot afford to maintain the status quo. The world has changed. Life has changed. It would be very foolish of us to want to continue to live the way we used to, because we no longer can. We must now quickly think about how to live our lives in the new world. We have to build a mental and physical infrastructure of our people. I am so grateful to God that we won that election. Because we were challenged. People told us that to win election in Nigeria, what you need to focus on is stomach infrastructure. And we refused and said we would rather invest in mental infrastructure. And we thank God that mental infrastructure today has superseded stomach infrastructure. That is not to say stomach infrastructure is not important, but it's to lay the point that it is mental infrastructure that creates stomach infrastructure. Let's now focus on how are we going to do this. Amongst other things, we have to launch a new project. And that is what I'm here to do today with my colleagues. That's why I'm so excited that we have Sir David Ajay in the house today. Because this morning, we're going to be launching the historic Benin project. This project will help us reconnect our past glory to our present realities so that we can now determine for ourselves how to sustain the future of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to this morning launch the historic Benin project. It's not coming on. Someone come and help with my technology. The Historic Benin project is in partnership with the Legacy Restoration Trust, the British Museum, the Palace of the Oba of Benin, the federal government, Edo State government, and other stakeholders. The Historic Benin project will talk about and encompass projects that will lead to the discovery of the greatness of Benin and Edo State. It will include architectural interventions. And like I said, we have a privilege of having on this project someone who can easily be regarded as one of Africa's greatest contemporary architect, Sir David Adjaye. It will also involve archaeological restorations, because we know there's still so much in the Benin that has not been discovered. And we want to thank specifically and especially the British Museum that has already made a donation of $4 million for the archaeological project. It will involve urban regeneration and urban renewal. Because if we are going to create the kind of visitor experience, we want to attract the quantity and quality of people to enjoy our state, to see all these great reforms we've undertaken, then we must make the state look beautiful. So the steps we have taken to date is to establish an independent trust we call the Legacy Restoration Trust. This is important because we're going to be raising large sums of money globally for this project. We have already received commitments, but from my experience as an investment banker, what investors want to see is transparency. They want to see clarity as to how the monies they have invested, it will be spent. And that will be the responsibility of this trust, which will consist of board members locally, nationally, and internationally. We have, like I said, began the work with the British Museum and the National Museum of the British Museum and the National Museum and Monuments to scope the work that needs to do in terms of the archaeology and research that needs to be undertaken. The last archaeological work that was done in Benin was done in 1950. If you look at other civilizations, whether it's in Egypt, across the continent, the works they've been doing, they've been archaeological discoveries in the last several decades, but we haven't done so in almost 70 years. The other thing we have done, and which Sir David will talk about, is in the last 1 year, we've quietly with his team, worked very hard and assiduously doing research. They've been back and forth to Benin, and he, I hope this morning, will unveil, if not the full concept, but part of the concept and thinking behind the museum and the other things they intend to do. That's just a snapshot of the world-class museum which we intend to build. And by the grace of God, by the time we are leaving office on November 11th, 2024, this project should be far developed, if not totally completed. It is going to be called the Edo Museum of West African Art, EMOWA. I'll let Sir David talk about the impact and the imperatives for this project. This is what he has done all his life. I mean, he's built one of the most respected museums of African arts in Washington, D.C., so he has the experience and the insights. And all that is left for me to do now is to reassure you that as your government, we are going to focus on a full complement of development. We're not just going to focus on food, on roads, on electricity. We want to focus on how all of this will come together to make us better human beings and to make us leave something for the future generations. Let it be said that our generation left something behind. We cannot continue to complain and lament that what we met has been destroyed. And believe that we were not culpable in bringing ourselves as a country to where we are today. But in all of what has gone on and what has happened over the decades, let us come out and say, yes, in our time, we built something, and let that be the African Museum of West African Arts. Thank you. Before I leave the stage, there was something I thought we should do before I started. Yesterday, as our inauguration was going on, we lost one of Africa's greatest heroes, General Jerry Rawlings of Ghana. I just felt that as a friend, because he visited Edo several times in his lifetime, can we all just be upstanding to observe 1 minute of silence in his memory? May the soul of late General Jerry Rawlings rest in perfect peace.